Have you ever been in a situation where things are finally miraculously going exactly your way, and yet you feel this overwhelming, almost like sickening urge to just hit the panic button and pull out?
Oh, absolutely. It's a incredibly common feeling.
Right, like think about it. You're winning, the numbers are up, the project is succeeding, or maybe, a relationship is really thriving.
Yeah, everything is objectively good.
Exactly. But instead of popping champagne and celebrating, your chest tightens. Your breathing gets shallow, and you are suddenly just utterly terrified.
You basically want to sabotage the very thing you've been working so hard to achieve.
Yes, which is so bizarre. And that's exactly what we're tackling today in this deep dive. We are unpacking this mechanism because, well, it's arguably one of the most counterintuitive experiences of the human mind.
It really is. I mean, we spend all of our energy, our time, our resources striving for a positive outcome. And yet the exact moment we get there, our autonomic nervous system reacts as if we've, stepped barefoot onto a live landmine.
It's wild. And the source material we have today captures the psychological paradox better than, honestly, anything I've ever read.
Yeah, and the fascinating part is what the source material actually is.
Right. We aren't looking at some peer-reviewed cognitive psychology paper or dissecting a massive behavioral economics textbook. Our source today is literally a single, brief, incredibly raw forum post from a financial trader.
Just 50 words.
50 words, an anonymous message typed out in a moment of pure, unfiltered, agonizing stress. So the mission for today's deep dive is to put these 50 words under a microscopic lens.
Which is perfect because it functions as this pristine psychological artifact. It's a cry for help posted to a community board in the absolute heat of the moment.
So it completely bypasses the usual social filters, right?
There's no posturing. There's no attempt to sound like a sophisticated Wall Street professional holding this perfectly diversified portfolio. It is just the raw anatomy of human fear.
Laid entirely bare on a digital screen. So we're going to deconstruct this single plea for help to uncover the roots of why we sabotage our own success. Why this trader and why you listening right now might feel physically compelled to close a profitable situation prematurely.
We'll be getting into the neurobiology of that fear, the mechanics of how we rationalize doubt, and that really exhausting internal war against our own habits.
Because I am completely obsessed with understanding the how and why behind the brain's tendency to treat success as a mortal threat. So let's jump right in.
Let's do it. To get to the bottom of this, we really have to unpack the very precise phrasing this trader uses.
Because every word matters here.
Right. When a human being is operating under a state of high cognitive load and physiological stress, which this author undeniably was, every single word choice, every keystroke error, every omission of standard punctuation provides a direct window into their subconscious.
Wow. Okay, so let's start at the very beginning of their statement. This is the exact moment the psychological distress gets triggered. The trader writes, and I quote, "Why, when I'm in profit, I feel the urgent of closing my trading."
The word that demands immediate attention there is urgent.
Yeah, that stood out to me too.
Right, because they aren't saying, why do I logically consider taking my profit, or why do I ponder closing my trade? They use a word that describes a physiological mandate.
An actual physical drive.
Exactly. Urgency is not a passive intellectual thought. It's a localized drive in the body. It tells us the autonomic nervous system has entirely taken the wheel.
That makes total sense. It's like that sudden cold sweat you get when you realize you left the front door wide open.
Or when you lean back just a fraction of an inch too far in your office chair.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that exact feeling. Hitting that point of no return where gravity just takes over. It's a full body alarm bell. But here is the paradox.
The trigger.
Yeah. The trigger for this massive fight or flight response is the phrase "in profit," which makes no sense. From a purely logical standpoint, being in profit is the ultimate goal.
You'd think so, yes.
Profit is safety, it's resource accumulation. It literally means your thesis was correct. Biologically, shouldn't success trigger a flood of dopamine and serotonin and leave you feeling, relaxed?
You would definitely assume so. But that overlooks how the brain actually assesses environmental safety. To understand why profit triggers an acute stress response, one normally reserved for immediate physical danger, we have to look at the architecture of the brain.
Okay, lay it on me.
So we're specifically looking at the relationship between the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is the logical planning executive center of your brain.
The part that does the math.
Exactly. It understands abstract concepts like financial profit and long-term strategy, but the amygdala is your ancient threat detection center. And the thing is, it doesn't understand money at all.
Wait, really? It doesn't register the profit?
Not even a little bit. It only understands predictability and unpredictability.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah. So when a trade is open and the price is fluctuating, even if it's fluctuating in a profitable direction, the amygdala just sees chaos.
It just sees a lack of stability.
Precisely. An open trade represents an unresolved future. And the human brain, on an evolutionary level, violently despises the unknown.
Because in our ancestral environment, an unknown variable usually meant, what, a predator?
A predator or a sudden lack of food, something lethal. So even though the trader is in profit, the outcome is still actively fluctuating.
So the amygdala perceives this continuous uncertainty as an active threat.
Yes, it sounds the alarm. It starts flooding the bloodstream with cortisol and adrenaline. And this chemical dump effectively short-circuits the prefrontal cortex.
Wow. So the logical brain literally gets taken offline by the chemical response to uncertainty.
It gets heavily suppressed, yeah. And the moment the prefrontal cortex is compromised, the goal of the human organism shifts instantaneously.
So it's no longer about the money.
Right. A few minutes prior, the goal was execute a trading strategy to maximize financial return. But under the influence of cortisol, the new overriding singular goal becomes achieve immediate emotional relief from this unbearable physiological tension.
Which perfectly explains the lack of punctuation.
Yeah.
I noticed this right away when reading the source material.
Yeah, the formatting.
Yeah. In that first sentence, why, when in profit, I feel the urgent of closing my trading, there is zero punctuation. No comma, no question mark at the end, despite it clearly being a question.
That is a brilliant observation. The grammar is a direct reflection of the neurochemical state we just discussed.
Because punctuation takes effort, right?
Exactly. When the brain enters a state of high urgency, it sheds non-essential cognitive functions to conserve energy for survival. Punctuation is a luxury of a calm, functioning prefrontal cortex.
It requires pacing.
Right. It requires pacing, structure, and foresight to place a comma or a question mark. This lack of punctuation grammatically mirrors a rushed, anxious, hyperventilating state.
The fine motor control and the linguistic structuring degrade because the trader is literally typing at the speed of their own panic.
That's exactly what's happening.
I want to propose an analogy here, just to see if this captures the mechanism of that tension. Imagine someone walks up to you and hands you a wildly fragile, priceless, incredibly rare glass sculpture.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
The second that beautiful thing is placed in your hands, your brain doesn't flood with the joy of possessing it. The joy is entirely erased by the overwhelming, paralyzing terror of dropping it.
No, that's good.
Right. Your first thought isn't, look at the craftsmanship. Your first thought is, I need to put this down on a solid surface right this second before I shatter it. The tension of holding it is so uncomfortable that you just want to get rid of it.
That is a phenomenal way to illustrate the mechanism of tension. Holding that glass sculpture requires a continuous, high-wire act of physical and mental calibration.
Your muscles are tense, your focus is entirely consumed by not making a mistake.
Exactly. And in the market, keeping a profitable trade open requires the exact same continuous, draining expenditure of emotional energy.
But let me push back on this a little bit, or at least try to, separate the variables. Is this urgency actually about the financial value of the money on the line? Or is the money just a proxy?
What do you mean?
Well, because it sounds to me like they aren't actually managing a financial portfolio anymore. They're managing their own heart rate. They are just trying to escape the physical discomfort of the tension itself.
You've completely identified the core shift in the trader's motivation. At this stage of the panic cycle, the objective financial value of the asset is almost irrelevant.
So if you pull them away from the screen?
If you pull them away and ask them to neutrally analyze a chart, their prefrontal cortex could probably engage and give you a rational answer. But they are not neutral.
Yeah.
They are experiencing the physiological weight of carrying that glass sculpture.
So closing the trade is just putting the sculpture down.
It resolves the uncertainty immediately. It puts it safely on the table. The instant they click close, the tension vanishes, the heart rate drops, the breathing normalizes.
Wow.
And the fact that they might have sacrificed a massive potential long-term gain to get that relief is entirely secondary to the immediate reward. which is just the cessation of physical anxiety.
That perfectly sets up the biological feeling, the urgency. But I really want to transition from that general physical feeling to the specific targeted fear driving it. Like, what exactly is this trader so terrified of losing?
The next line in the source material provides a massive clue for that.
It really does. They write, I feel like market may turn and I will lose what I'm seeing.
We really need to isolate and examine that phrase, what I'm seeing. In 50 words, this is arguably the most profound psychological insight into the modern digital human experience.
It's so specific. They didn't write, I feel I will lose my money.
Right, or lose my percentage gain, or damage my portfolio. They specifically anchored the fear to what I'm seeing.
Because what are they actually seeing? I mean, they are staring at a brightly lit screen. They are looking at a flashing green number. It's unrealized profit. It's just pixels on a monitor.
But the brain doesn't process it as an abstract probability, does it?
No, it does not. And the reason why lies in the intersection of visual processing and a cognitive bias known as the endowment effect. The endowment effect. Remind me how that works.
It dictates that humans ascribe significantly more value to things simply because they own them. Historically, this made perfect evolutionary sense. If you were a hunter-gatherer and you found a bush full of berries, possessing those berries in your hands was vastly more valuable than the abstract idea of berries somewhere else in the forest.
Right. A bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. You protect what you physically hold.
Exactly.
But wait, you can't physically hold a digital number on a screen.
And that is exactly where the visual cortex hijacks the system. In the modern digital environment, the optic nerve processes that flashing green number and routes it directly to the brain's reward center. Yet the brain acts as if it takes physical ownership of that number, the exact millisecond it appears on the screen. The visual anchor creates an immediate, visceral illusion of possession.
So if my trading app says my open position is up $500, my logical brain knows that this is an open market and the trade isn't closed. But my primitive brain didn't say, I have a statistical probability of closing this trade with a positive yield.
No. Your primitive brain says, I am holding $500 in my hand. It is mine. It is already in my pocket.
That is insane.
That is the exact mechanism. The unrealized gain is encoded in the brain as realized property. And this illusion of possession instantly activates another deeply ingrained survival mechanism.
Which is?
Loss aversion. Neurochemically, the pain of losing something is roughly twice as powerful as the pleasure of gaining it.
So the fear is literally double the excitement.
Exactly. When you gain something, you get a mild hit of dopamine. But when you lose something you already own, your brain treats it as a threat to your survival, triggering that massive cortisol dump we discussed earlier.
Okay, this implies that normal market fluctuations are being entirely misinterpreted by the trader's brain. Because the financial market breathes, right? It moves up and down. If the market turns downward slightly.
The trader does not view that downward tick as a normal statistical variance in a live open position, because they have already mentally claimed ownership of the absolute peak green number they saw on the screen.
So any dip below that peak is experienced not as a fluctuation, but as an active theft.
Yes. If they saw $500 and it ticks down to $480, they don't think, I am up $480. They think, the market just reached into my pocket and stole $20 from me.
That is why the fear of losing games is so incredibly visceral. It's not processed as a missed opportunity. It is processed neurologically as a robbery in progress.
Perfectly said.
Okay, but I have to play devil's advocate here. I mean, I'm following the neurobiology, but let's look at the reality of financial markets. Isn't it completely rational to fear the market turning?
Well,
Markets do turn, trends reverse. People lose vast fortunes by holding on too long. So how can a listener tell the difference between a smart, defensive, strategic maneuver like taking profits to protect capital and just blindly giving in to this visual emotional panic?
that is the dividing line between a professional managing risk and an amateur being managed by their own biology. The crucial difference lies entirely in the origin and the timing of the decision.
Okay, break that down for me.
A smart defensive maneuver is proactive. It is decided in the prefrontal cortex before the emotional cortisol response kicks in.
Give me an example of what that looks like mechanically. Like, how does a pro do it?
Mechanically, it looks like relying on pre-established parameters. A professional uses technical tools. They might say, I'm placing a trailing stop-loss order at 5% below the peak. Or, if the MACD indicator shows a bearish crossover on the 1-hour chart, I will exit the position.
Because the indicator doesn't have emotions.
Exactly. The make-CD indicator doesn't have a heart rate. A trailing stop-loss software setting doesn't feel fear. These are mechanical executions of a logical premise decided when the brain was completely calm.
So the professional decision is cold, calculating, and frankly, almost boring. It's outsourced to math.
Yes. Conversely, giving in to emotional panic is entirely reactive. It is driven not by external market data, but by internal sensation.
Like a gut feeling.
Right. If your trigger for closing the trade is, I can't stomach watching this number fluctuate anymore, or I just need to lock this in so I can finally go to sleep, that is emotional panic.
Right. Look closely at the trader in our source material. They are not referencing support and resistance levels.
No.
They are not talking about macroeconomic news or volume profiles. They are referencing their own internal state. They say, I feel like the market may turn and lose what I'm seeing.
The locus of control has shifted entirely inward to their own emotional regulation rather than outward to objective, quantifiable market conditions.
That is such a clarifying distinction. It's the difference between navigating a ship using a compass and a map versus navigating the ship based on how scared you are of the dark.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Right. But now, here is where human psychology gets really tricky. Because pure, unadulterated panic is deeply uncomfortable to admit to ourselves, right?
Yeah.
We rarely just stand there and say, hey, I am acting irrationally because I am terrified.
Nobody wants to admit that.
Exactly. The brain has to justify the urge to flee. And we see this rationalization engine boot up in real time in the trader's very next sentence. They write, I start dawdling about the market that VIT may not go far.
Let's look at the physical evidence of the panic first, because the explicit typos in the source text here are critical data points.
Oh, the typos are incredible.
Right, they spell doubting as D-A-U-B-T-I-N-G, and then we have that VIT where the V and the spacebar were clearly smashed together simultaneously.
We deliberately kept those typos in the outline because they paint such a vivid picture of the author's physical state. You can feel the frantic energy.
They're forensic evidence of the adrenaline dump we've been talking about. When adrenaline floods the system, blood is routed away from the extremities and toward the major muscle groups in preparation to run or fight.
So their hands are literally failing them.
Yes, it causes a massive degradation in fine motor control. The tremors and the lack of coordination that result in smashing the V instead of the spacebar are symptoms of a physiological system in overdrive.
But there's a psychological angle too, right? The mechanism of what they're doing with the word doubt.
Exactly. The truly fascinating part is the cognitive cover-up.
So let's break down that sequence. First, the physical panic hits because of the unpredictability. Second, the visual attachment to the green number triggers the fear of theft. And now thirdly comes this doubt about the market. It feels like the brain is doing a massive cover-up job.
A cover-up is the perfect way to describe cognitive dissonance in action. Let's imagine the amygdala as the impulsive, reactive CEO of the brain.
Okay, I like this.
The CEO has already made the decision. We are terrified. We must flee, close the trade. But the prefrontal cortex, which acts like the company's PR firm, cannot accept that its CEO is acting like a frightened animal.
Because it ruins our self-image.
Precisely. To act purely out of fear damages our self-image as rational, intelligent beings. So the PR firm frantically fabricates a press release to authorize the CEO's emotional desire to flee. They invent a narrative. Well, upon further reflection, the market probably isn't going to go much further anyway.
It's the brain acting as its own defense attorney. The emotion literally dresses itself up in a suit and tie and masquerades as logical analysis.
That is the essence of retroactive rationalization. A classic example in neuroscience comes from split brain experiments, where the left hemisphere of the brain will invent a completely coherent, yet entirely false, logical reason to explain an action taken by the subconscious right hemisphere.
And the brain actually believes the lie.
The brain absolutely believes its own fabricated story. By saying, I doubt the market will go far, the trader provides themselves with cognitive cover. It sounds like market analysis. It sounds like a reasoned, calculated judgment. But it is nothing more than a disguise for the urge to escape tension.
Let me throw an analogy at you to see if the PR firm and CEO dynamic holds up.
Let's hear it.
It's like you are on a massive roller coaster and you're slowly clanking up that huge first hill. You are strapped in, you are completely safe, but the anticipation and the height are just killing you. Your amygdala is screaming.
Yep, the tension is building.
Suddenly, you convince yourself that you heard a weird metallic grinding noise underneath your cart, and you decide the track is definitely structurally compromised. You don't actually know the first thing about roller coaster engineering, but you desperately use that fabricated logical observation about the grinding noise as an excuse to scream at the operator to stop the ride and let you off.
That's brilliant.
You're using a manufactured logical deduction to mask pure, unadulterated fear.
That analogy holds up perfectly. And if we extrapolate it back to the trader, we uncover the proof that the doubt is manufactured.
How so?
Think about it. If the trader truly empirically believed the market wouldn't go far based on hard data, like if they had looked at the volume dropping off or hit a major resistance level, they would not be framing this forum post as a plea for help.
Right. They just act on it.
Exactly. If your data clearly says the upward move is over, you close the trade, you secure your profit, you pat yourself on the back for a textbook execution, and you move on with your day.
There is no conflict if the data is clear.
Exactly the point. The very fact they are agonizing over this decision, that their hands are shaking while they type, that they are asking the internet for an intervention, it proves that on a deeper subconscious level, they know the PR firm is lying.
They know the doubt is fake.
They know it's a fabrication. The logical brain knows it is being hijacked by fear, but it feels powerless to stop the execution of the order.
Which brings us to what I think is the most heartbreaking part of this entire message. We've established the physical fear, the illusion of visual possession, and the desperate rationalization. But the trader doesn't stop there.
No, they don't.
They don't just hit sell and walk away. They exhibit this incredibly painful, high level of self-reflection. They finish that thought about doubting the market by saying, but I have to overcome this habit.
The inclusion of the word habit is monumental here.
Yeah.
And again, we see another typo with ovacome, spelled O-V-A-C-O-M-E, but the label habit is a massive, vulnerable confession of a behavioral loop.
By calling it a habit, they are admitting this isn't a one-time fluke. This isn't just a single bad day at the office.
It signifies a deeply entrenched neural pathway. The trader is trapped in a biological loop. Let's look at the neuroplasticity of a habit.
Yeah.
The rule in neuroscience is neurons that fire together wire together. The first time this trader entered a trade, got into profit, felt panic, and closed early, they created a neural pathway. By getting that immediate relief from the tension, they rewarded that pathway.
So they essentially trained their brain to do it again.
Exactly. Every subsequent time they repeat the cycle, the brain insulates that specific neural circuit with a substance called myelin.
Myelin. What does that do?
Myelination acts like insulation on an electrical wire. It makes the signal travel faster and stronger.
Yeah.
Over time, the panic response and the urge to sell become an automatic high-speed biological reflex. They have a massive amount of historical data on their own behavior, and they recognize the pattern.
So they are dealing with a profound psychological burden of self-awareness. It's like they have two minds at war with each other simultaneously within the same skull.
That's a great way to put it.
You have the emotional, impulsive brain screaming, sell right now, secure the visual profit, the market is turning. And at the exact same moment, the logical observer brain is sitting back in the theater of the mind, sighing and saying, here we go again. I am literally watching myself self-sabotage. I know it's a mistake, and yet I can't stop my hand from reaching for the mouse.
This internal duality is incredibly exhausting. It leads to a phenomena known as ego depletion. Every time the logical brain tries to fight off the impulsive brain, it burns a massive amount of cognitive energy.
It's just draining.
Knowing you have a destructive habit is very, very different from possessing the mechanism to fix it. In fact, in many cases, this hyper-awareness can actually amplify the anxiety, creating a vicious feedback loop of frustration and shame.
Wait, that feels entirely backwards to me. How does the awareness make it worse? We are always told that recognizing the problem is the first step to solving it, you know? Shouldn't knowing about the bias be half the battle?
You would logically assume so, but in the realm of emotional regulation and neurobiology, simply knowing is often a trap.
A trap? How?
Because once you are aware of the habit, you are no longer just fighting the unpredictability of the market, and you aren't just fighting the fear of losing the digital money. You add a massive secondary stressor. You are now fighting your own self-esteem. Yeah. When you know it's a harmful cognitive bias and you still feel compelled to give into it, you flood your system with guilt and shame. You feel weak. You feel undisciplined.
And that shame compounds the stress.
Exactly. This shame compounds the baseline stress level, which actually lowers your cognitive threshold, making your prefrontal cortex shut down even faster. The myelinated pathway of fear gets triggered earlier and earlier in the trade.
So knowing about it just makes you feel worse when you inevitably fail.
Right. Recognizing the biological bias without having a concrete mechanism to neutralize it just makes you a highly educated victim of your own impulses.
A highly educated victim of your own impulses. That is a devastatingly accurate way to describe the modern condition. It perfectly explains why reading a book about psychology doesn't automatically cure your bad habits. It just gives you the vocabulary to describe exactly how you are failing.
It's painful, but true.
Which brings us to the climax of this trader's internal conflict. It culminates in a final, seemingly innocent question, but it's a question that completely reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of how human beings fix deeply ingrained psychological responses. The text ends with, "What should I do now, Ike?"
The entire crux of the behavioral trap lies in the phrasing, "What should I do?" The trader is desperately asking for an action to solve a non-action problem.
Right. Because human beings are conditioned from birth to believe that problems are solved through intervention. In almost every other area of human existence, when we face a threat or a problem, the solution involves taking a physical action.
Like what?
Well, if you have a flat tire on the highway, you do something, you get out the jack and change it. If you are freezing cold, you do something, you build a fire or put on a coat. Our evolutionary biology is hardwired for action bias. We want to actively, physically intervene to exert control over discomfort.
Action bias was a phenomenal survival trait on the ancestral savanna. If you heard a rustling in the bushes, the cost of taking a false positive action like running away when it was just the wind was a few burned calories.
But the cost of doing nothing.
The cost of a false negative doing nothing when it was a predator was death. So we evolved to heavily favor taking action when we feel threatened. Doing something, anything, feels productive.
But the profound irony here, and really of many complex modern psychological hurdles, is that to overcome the habit of closing a profitable trade prematurely, the required action is actually doing absolutely categorically nothing.
Literally nothing.
Putting your hands in your pockets and stepping away from the keyboard.
Yes. Letting the mathematical probability of the trade play out according to the original pre-planned parameters. It requires allowing this severely uncomfortable emotion of uncertainty to exist in your body without acting upon it to alleviate the pressure.
But the amygdala hates that.
It violently rejects doing nothing when it feels threatened. To the primitive brain, doing nothing in the face of a perceived threat feels like rolling over and accepting death.
I love that we kept the emoji in our outline for this episode, the yellow thinking face emoji with the hand resting on the chin. Because in modern text-based communication, that emoji doesn't just mean I am pondering a philosophical puzzle.
Not in this context. No.
In this context, it signifies a genuine state of feeling utterly stuck, lost, and desperately searching for an external mechanical solution to an internal emotional storm.
It is a profound look of exasperation. The trader is looking outward for a quick fix. They are hoping someone in the forum will reply and give them a neat, tidy mechanical solution.
Like a cheat code.
Exactly. They want someone to say, oh, your problem is you aren't using the right algorithm. Just adjust your moving average time frame to 15 minutes, or just tweak your stop-loss software to trail at exactly 12%. They want a tool, a tactic, an action they can physically execute with their mouse to make the feeling go away.
But the reality is that the only real fix isn't going to be found on the charts or in a software setting at all.
No, it isn't. The only genuine solution is neuroplastic rewiring. It is building emotional tolerance to the physical discomfort of holding unrealized gains.
Stretching your capacity to feel distress.
Right, expanding your nervous system's capacity to sit with the cortisol dump of anxiety without needing to immediately hit the sell button to resolve it. What the trader needs is essentially exposure therapy.
Okay, what does that look like in practice?
They need to keep the trade open, feel the panic, watch the market fluctuate, and teach the amygdala that the fluctuation is not a mortal threat, over and over again until the myelin pathway changes.
It reminds me of someone sitting down for their first meditation class. The entire point of mindfulness meditation is to simply observe your thoughts and physical sensations without reacting to them or judging them.
Yes, very similar.
So if 10 minutes in, the student gets distracted, their legs ache, they feel frustrated, and they raise their hand to ask the instructor, "What should I do to fix this feeling?" The instructor's answer is always going to be, just sit there and return your focus to your breath.
Which is incredibly frustrating to hear.
Exactly. For a brain that is evolutionarily wired for constant action, for fixing problems, for preserving its own life, just sitting there when you feel internal alarms going off feels like walking a tightrope over a canyon without a safety net. It feels wildly irresponsible.
That is a perfect parallel.
Yeah.
The action bias is so strong that it convinces you that doing something, even if that something is objectively destructive to your long-term goals, like closing a massive winning trade for a tiny fraction of its potential, is fundamentally better than suffering the sheer uncertainty of doing nothing.
It's all about avoiding the pain of uncertainty.
Overcoming this doesn't require better market analysis. It requires a fundamental rewiring of how the individual perceives danger and how they choose to respond to their own internal physical sensations of stress.
Okay, let's pull all of these massive concepts together. We have spent this entire deep dive microscopically examining just 50 words from an anonymous trader on a random internet forum. But what an absolute journey those 50 words took us on.
It truly functions as a masterclass in behavioral psychology, evolutionary biology, and neuroscience, all compressed into a single, frantic, breathless plea for help.
We traced the entire anatomical and biological sequence of human self-sabotage. We started with the physical urgency that fight-or-flight cortisol dump bizarrely triggered by being in a positive, unpredictable state of profit.
And then we explored the visual hijack of what I'm seeing.
Right, where the brain's optic nerve and reward centers claim physical ownership of an unrealized, flickering green number on a screen, making any normal market dip feel like a visceral, personal theft due to loss aversion.
We then watched the mind scramble to create cognitive cover for its own fear, using the prefrontal cortex as a PR firm to rationalize pure panic through the manufactured doubt that the market wouldn't go any further.
And we felt the heavy weight of the trader's painful self-awareness, identifying the behavior as a myelinated habit they have to overcome, revealing that terrible internal duality between the emotional, reactive CEO and the logical, exhausted observer.
Finally, we looked at the desperate, paradoxical search for an action to take, a thing to do, when the only real solution to holding a winning position is fighting our evolutionary programming and enduring the excruciating act of doing absolutely nothing.
It is a sequence of biological events that plays out literally thousands of times a day in financial markets all over the world. But the crucial takeaway is that this is not just about trading stocks or crypto.
No, not at all.
The psychological mechanics we have unpacked today, loss aversion, the endowment effect, action bias, retroactive rationalization, the amygdala hijack, these are the fundamental operating systems of the human animal.
They apply to everything.
And that is exactly where I want to bring this whole deep dive back to you listening right now. Because while the source material today was focused on the financial markets, the underlying biology applies to almost every single aspect of your life.
It's universal.
I want you to really think about it. Where in your own life do you feel that sudden, urgent, unexplainable need to pull out of a winning situation just because you are secretly terrified of losing what you're seeing?
Maybe it's a relationship.
Yeah. Maybe it's a romantic relationship that is finally, after years of bad luck, going incredibly well. And suddenly, out of nowhere, you start manufacturing doubt. You start picking petty fights. You start looking for exits because your amygdala is terrified of the unpredictability of getting hurt later.
Or perhaps it manifests in your professional career. You finally get that massive promotion. You are exactly where you wanted to be. The corner office is yours.
And then what?
And suddenly, you feel the overwhelming urge to step back, to decline the bigger project, to sabotage a presentation, because the high visibility and the new expectations create an unbearable physiological tension. You want to retreat to the safety and predictability of what you already knew, even though you are currently massively in profit in your career trajectory.
It is the exact same biological mechanism firing in your brain. You are attempting to resolve the agonizing anxiety of success by proactively self-sabotaging.
It's trying to put the glass sculpture down.
Exactly. So I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder today. Something to sit with and deeply mull over the next time you find your heart racing and you feel the urge to run away from something genuinely good. What if the intense, uncomfortable, almost sickening urge to hit the panic button and close out a winning situation isn't a warning sign from your brain that you are about to lose everything? What if that feeling of unbearable tension, that overwhelming desire to escape, is actually the strongest indicator that you have finally pushed past your old limits and you are exactly where you are supposed to be? Have you ever been in a situation where things are finally miraculously going exactly your way, and yet you feel this overwhelming, almost like sickening urge to just hit the panic button and pull out?
Oh, absolutely. It's a incredibly common feeling.
Right. Like, think about it. You're winning. The numbers are up. The project is succeeding, or maybe, a relationship